Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of T.N.T Garage and Performance, and again on the 73 Checker Gasser Marathon. But I made some pretty big bounds in this episode. One is I completely reconfigured the front of the firewall, so that's something. And the reason that is because I had a Corvette master cylinder, a manual master cylinder, that I wanted to install and get the steering column in and the steering shaft in, along with also changing the altitude a little bit of the rear end, bringing it a little closer to the ground. So this car, by the end of the episode, will have the master cylinder, a working brake pedal, and working steering. So that's a pretty big step. Plus, I make the final list in the home stretch, the countdown to getting this car done, running, driving, and it's all coming pretty quick, so let's get to it. Well, as far as attacking the process of kind of installing our Corvette style master cylinder and a proportioning valve for disc and drum brakes, I've also decided that I want to move my pedal box down for a couple of reasons. Number one, the new floors in the car don't follow what the old floors did. There were many more compound curves in the floor. We just went simple, ended up using less metal, making the body lighter. So where my footwell is, I need the master and the brake box about 2 inches lower than what it currently is. And also too, it'll bring the steering column down because the factory location, because these cars are pretty much built like a truck body-wise, the cowl to floor height is pretty far. And the steering column is mounted pretty high. So if I sit where I want to sit in the car with a cage and everything, the wheel's going to be up here. Even with a tilt column, it's going to be way too high. So I'm going to drop both the pedal box and the steering column 2 inches down, basically moving this point down and then moving the hole for the steering column to poke out down, where it'll still clear my mid plate and get to my steering box. I do have the steering shaft and the U-joints to accomplish all that. But what we need to do is measure this, measure the relation from center to hole, so that distance maintains when we drop it between the center of the master and the center of the steering column. We don't want to change that. We want everything to be factory, just 2 inches lower. So I started cutting out some cardboard because I'm going to continue this surface that's flat, and we're going to continue it down about 2.5, 3 inches. And from there, we're going to, after we get this piece made, we're going to make another piece that angles back to the toe boards and then box in the side. So we have an actual inset pedal box, which the reason why I'm going wider than the original pedal box is because we're going to make room to facilitate the clutch pedal as well. So once we get this set in, we'll make our templates. We'll transfer that to steel, including the side plates here. And then I think we can start cutting this up. So I'm going to do a few measurements here, get the center point of these two holes so we know the distance apart, and then start making marks, because I'm going to cut this out and probably reuse this so I don't have to drill new holes and have it be off or anything like that. This is already pre-drilled. We will cut it out, move it down 2 inches, and then make our plate from there. So first things first, I'm going to grab a tape measure. We're going to measure and write stuff down so I don't forget, but let's do that. I'll tell you one thing, tilt front end definitely makes it a lot more convenient to work on the firewall and not have to take the clip-on off 47 times. So let's get a center to center measurement. 9.5 inches is going to be approximately what we got there. So we'll write this down. Master to column. 9.5 inches. We got that measurement there. And now I'll probably come in here, grind this so I can cut it. It just makes it easier so I don't have to grind it after I cut it, try and hold on to that. So I'm going to get the flat wheel in here. We're going to grind around the mount for the pedal box, and then we'll make our marks and then cut this piece out and then start building the rest of our new pedal box. Also too, I'm probably going to move the power distribution center, the fuse block in this car. Either I'm going to move it up higher or I'm going to move it to the other side or to the center, just because I am going to have some tubes made that come from the frame down here and approximately into this area where they will tie in with a dash bar in the future. But I'm going to have the bars in here before the full cage goes in, just to keep everything in place and structurally sound. It'll also help brace the frame and everything in case we pick the front wheels of this up. So let's get the flat wheel out and get to grinding. And now I'll grab my square and we'll make marks to cut that and then throw the death wheel at it. There, we've got that marked out. We're going to cut this out first, and then we are going to set up how we're going to make our panel down here once we get that cut out. So I do have a mark over here, so once I cut it, I'll have a reference to dropping it 2 inches. And that way we don't lose our place. And we're pretty much just going to get rid of this down here and replace it with fresh metal. So I'm going to grab the death wheel and get that blasted out of there. Well, now it's time to start making templates. And as far as this, it's pretty simple. It's going to be one plate and then another one that angles down to this toe board. But we got some very complicated stuff going on here. So I'm just going to slide a piece of cardboard in so we can get our profile of what this side is going to be. So we'll just mark it. There we go. There we go. And that is our profile, which we will actually close this off. So when that sits in there, that'll give us what we need as far as being able to close this gap up. And once we get our other pieces laid in, we can see the angle that we need to make the filler piece on this side, and then do the same thing over here. There we go. Now we've got that. we can start kind of putting everything together here. All right, so we got our template made. I laid it out on the steel here, and we got our side pieces made that I'll cut out later and that'll close in the box. But when I was masking this in to the car, I just taped it in to the open hole, went inside the car and sat and realized I'm gonna need a little more room to hang the clutch pedal on a flat surface. So I decided to extend it 3.5 inches. So we're gonna cut this out with the trusty air shear and see what we get. All right, I've got the slight bend in there. We'll smooth that out in a second, but first I'm gonna finish cutting out the firewall so I can fit that and make sure we get the proper angle. Well, we've got our panel formed where I'm pretty well happy with it. And I left the bottom long just by a little bit because I'm actually gonna step flange it out. And that is where this guy comes in handy. So, just got to make sure we're going the right way here because we want it flanged out. And we will just slide our tool on. There we go. Yeah, that's working pretty good. Now we got a flange along the bottom here. Let's check the fit. We got a big gaping hole. You slide it up. There we go. I think that'll work. A little trimming on this panel over here. And we should have a pretty good setup there. Now to make sure our flange engages properly, I'm going to get this up in, clamp it up here, and then I can go on the back side and mark the leading edge of my toe board here to make sure we get that sitting up in the flange. And I can actually hole punch this with that same tool so I can spot weld it into place on the bottom. But I think that'll work quite nice. Once I get that in, I'm gonna trim off a little bit here, or just take my, actually I'll just take my grinding wheel and just clean off a little bit of that, and she should fit in nice and snug. And once we get this trimmed down here and tacked in up here, we can go ahead and put our mount for the master cylinder in and then fill this spot up here. Now before I get super carried away getting this tacked in, I want to make sure this surface is flat. So we can also put in our mount for the master cylinder, and then once that's tacked in, we get everything lined up, and then we can go around the panel and work it in. So I'm going to clean up the edges on here, and we'll get this tacked in there, and then we'll work on getting this panel fit the way it should be. see, we've got our new pedal box built up. It's nice and solid. And now what we need to do is get the pedal hanger assembly and pedal box set up to go in. So originally the brake booster went on the front. That had studs on the back of it that went through this bracket on the pedal assembly itself. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put bolts through the back side, tack them to the bracket so we can slide it in through these holes and be able to bolt it on pretty easily. This is what holds our column, and I'll have to extend these rods, because what these are for is to come up through the cowl and kind of support everything, the column, and brace up the pedal box. But that is something that I will tackle later. Mostly I just want to get this mounted and see where we're at. So I'm going to see if I can find some matching bolts and get this bolted in, get it set up, and then we can drill the holes for our Corvette Master. Well, now that we got the firewall all patched up, next thing to do is get our pedal box ready. I've got the new bolts welded to the pedal assembly so I can just slide it through the firewall. The next thing I need to do is get rid of these gusset bars that go up to the firewall. So I'm going to cut those off of the pedal box assembly, and we're going to make longer ones out of this here all thread. So I'll get these cut off, get this bolted in the car, and then we can see how long these need to be in order to support the entire assembly along with where the steering column bolts on. All right, we got our pedal box in, and now we can just run our off down to where the original bars welded onto the box, and we can set up what our length needs to be, and then cut it, put a nut on the back side like this one has, slide it up into the hole, weld it in, and then we can use the 2-nut system to adjust the tension up or down on our pedal box so it'll be supported by the firewall. Well, we've got our pieces of all thread cut to length, and these will drop through those holes and then weld to the brake pedal bracket box. And then on the underside where it comes through the cowl here, we'll have a nut, a washer, and then on the outside another washer and a nut. And we can kind of set the depth and how much we want to snug this up. So I'm going to go from the inside and stick these in and weld them into place, and then we can come outside again and set everything up. Well, we've got them welded to our box, and now we can go ahead and snug these up, kind of get everything in the car set where I want it. And once I have the depth set up here, I can go underneath, tighten the nuts on the back side up, and lock everything into place. And that's actually bigger than a 5/8. 11/16, here we come. We got her locked in. So now I can come back later, 5 minutes, 3 days, next year, and kind of trim these a little shorter so they won't interfere with our hood fitting it. So there we go. Now that we've got the pedal box absolutely locked in, it's not going anywhere. I know when I was doing this, a lot of you guys might have thought, well, you got to put another layer here. On these cars, that's what this is for. If you were just going to have a free-floating pedal box that wasn't attached to like a dash bar or something like that, yeah, you absolutely want a couple layers of steel there to keep the whole firewall from flexing. But that is what those are for. So we are set up there, and now we can work on mounting our master cylinder, which we will set this into place, mark the holes, drill 2 holes to hold it into place, and see how that works out with the push rod. I do have to modify the push rod I got I got a female end clevis. I needed a male end, but we could fix that because I have to shorten it anyway. So let's get to mounting the master. Well, we've got our holes measured and marked for us to drill through this and the pedal bracket. So I'm going to run a pilot hole first, and then we're going to enlarge it to the 7/16 that we need. Huh. I can honestly say I've never broken a bit that big with a hand drill. So I'm going to extract that, and we're going to grab another bit, I guess. And what even brand was this? Irwin. How about that? Well, only after a mild amount of fight, I've got the holes punched in, and we'll see if we can gently slide the master into place here. There we go. One side, figure out what I did with the other nut and bolt. Get it right there. And there we go. We'll just tighten that up. I'm not going to tack the back of the bolts to the bracket yet until I know for sure this is going to work. I know that they do make adapters where you could pull a booster off, put the adapter on, and then bolt a regular master to it. Those cost money. And this being a budget build, if we could do it this way, is it a little uglier? Yes. Is it just as functional? Also, yes. So I'm going to get this snugged down, and then we could work on getting our push rod length. On this pedal setup, I can actually move my brake switch forward and back, and then that'll give me more stroke of the pedal. So maybe I won't have to fiddle with the push rod as much as I initially thought I would. But I think this will work, so I'm going to snug that down. All right, now we're going to work on our push rod assembly. So like I said, this had a female clevis on it, which doesn't work because that's what my brake pedal has on it. This has the male end of the clevis. So what we're going to do, we're going to take the death wheel, buzz it off, grind it down to fit in this threaded coupler. And we will weld it into there, and then we'll have an adjustable push rod, which I may have to trim a little bit off the end of this and then round it off to go into the back of the master cylinder. Now on this Corvette style master, it's not a captured push rod like it would be on a Mopar or even this booster here. It just goes in, so having the adjustability of it really is a good thing because you want to have it stay mated with the back of the master cylinder. And there's also a boot that goes on the back of the master that holds the end of the push rod to make sure it doesn't drop out. So let's get this whacked off, and we can start making our push rod. Figure out a good way to do this here. I guess that'll do. There we go. Now we'll just have to actually grind this down a little bit to get it to fit in there, which is not a big deal. We'll grab the grinder with a flap wheel on it, put that in the drill, and clean it up. And I made sure that I'm only going to put it in so far because I want to maintain a good level of adjustability on this. So let's get that ground down. Well, there we go. That'll fit in there nicely, and we can weld all the way around and make sure that we've got a proper weld. Now, if you were doing this and you're looking at this going, oh my God, that's unsafe. It's actually not, because with a proper weld, this is going to stay put, and it's also pushing in. If it were a pull situation, especially when it comes to brakes, I wouldn't count on this, just the weld, to be able to pull. I would have, tapped that or threaded that and threaded it in. But since this is a push application, and many guys have done this, cutting and shortening and welding or brazing brake push rods together, this will be just fine and plenty safe. Well, there we go. We got her welded on. Both materials were nice and cherry red. So we got the heat into them, we got good penetration, and we now have ourselves an adjustable push rod that will work with our pedal and our master. I just want to make sure it turns free with the heat. So we're good to go there. Now I can go under the dash after I pull my brake light switch out and get my pedal where I want it. We could set up the overall length of this push rod by just taking some off the end and rounding it off. That way we're not compromising the push rod itself. Well, mine wiring messed under here. These are actually how they're equipped factory, so that's nice. But as you can see, we've got our brake pedal switch out of the way. We got the pedal stroked all the way forward to where it would be in the box. And that's much better than where the brake light switch was, which was about there, which gave me about 3 inches of pedal stroke. This is definitely enough where it's at. And now we can go in and measure from our clevis to the backside of our master. So this will get us an initial measurement, and we can adjust it out and then reset our brake pedal switch so everything will work and, actually be almost professional. All right, we got our push rod in and our brake light switch is back in. So that's adjusted up to where, let me just locate it here. Yep. So there we go. Perfect. We got our push rod in. There we go. I could slide the boot up a little bit. It's adjusted up, tightened down, and we're ready to go. It's not gonna pop out of the master. We're all good. So, and that gives us about the perfect pedal stroke, about 1 inch to the floor underneath the pedal, which if I sit on my makeshift seat, which is cooler here, where my feet would be, throttle, clutch, brake. So easy transition. It was a little too high, so I shortened the rod a little more. And once I get the clutch pedal mounted over here and cut this side of the pad off, I want the clutch to be about even with the brake pedal. So we'll have a pretty good setup here that I think will work out pretty nice. So now it's time to get the column mounted, and you could see that there's the bracket that originally was up against the dash, which I'll just make like an L bracket to hook these two. It's not critical. This dash doesn't need this structure. It's just sheet metal, but that's how they attached it. So we're going to measure that 9.5 inches of the note I took earlier straight down from the master. We'll punch a pilot hole, and I've got a 2 1/8 inch hole saw that will bust a hole through there and then slide our column in, and then we could start building the steering shaft. Well, we got the column mounted. You could tell I might have borrowed this out of the Camaro. I'm going to put a better steering column in that car when I go to build it. But this works because it's got tilt. It's a GM column. And most importantly, I could make the lower flange, can't barely see it, fit the firewall by just pie cutting it and bringing it together. Now, the reason why I'm using this steering column instead of the factory one is this has a rag joint end on it. Now, I could cut this and put a double D shaft on it, but this Camaro column already has a 1-inch double D. So now we can work on making our steering shaft. I've got a 3/4 double D on the toolbox. I've got the U-joint for this side. So let's get to making this up. All right. Well, now it's time to measure for our steering shaft. I've got my steering U-joint on the Vega box, and I've got my 1-inch double D to 3/4 double D U-joint here. The Vega box is a 5/8 36 spline, if I remember correctly, and you know, of course, the Chevy column is 1 to 3/4. Now, we're generally going to point these at each other, and I'm going to measure from just where the U-joint bottoms out inside. So basically where this taper is on each side, and cut my 3/4 double D to length. And that'll allow me to get this in without pulling a column, because I have plenty of room to slide the U-joint onto the Vega box further, and this little bit of taper will help me get the shaft in without having to disassemble everything, which this is securely locked where it's at on the Vega box with the set screws. So let's make a measurement, and we are at, let's get it up a little bit, point it at it. We do 16.5 inches. We should be in the realm of this working. So there to there, 16.5 should get us done and give us plenty of engagement. I'll leave a little room on it, a little over 16.5. So let's cut this up. All right, let's see if this works. So I'm going to loosen my set screw on the Vega box, and we're going to slide that further down the shaft, and we're going to slide that in all the way to where it touches the U-joint, and we're going to turn the wheel a little bit. We're going to start by getting that back in there. Get this flush right there. Tighten the set screw. Run the other one in. This is just a mock-up, so this should. Now we can go ahead and slide our U-joint for the Vega box where it belongs, and that should give us plenty of engagement. Actually, what we're going to do here, because I turned the wheel a little bit this way, we want to make sure that I'm engaged right where the groove is in the Vega box. So now we can run our set screw back in. Set that. I'm going to grab a couple other set screws and just kind of tighten this down in, and we'll see how our steering works. Like I said, this is mock-up. There's still another step to take before we finalize this. So let's grab a couple set screws. slide the shaft down a little more so we have proper engagement in both. There we go. Snug both these up. There we go. There. We've got our set screws in, and we have a couple millimeters of clearance to this cross member, which I figured we'd be all right, which we are. If anything, I could just kind of pop a little bit of a ding in that to make sure we're clear. Let's just make sure nothing interferes. There we go. We're not hitting the cross member. It's close, but we don't have any issues there. There's not any giant binding in the U-joints. We are at a bit of an angle on that one, but nothing that goes beyond the recommended specifications. That's plenty good. A little lesser of an angle at the steering box, but I think we're good. I'm going to get in the car, wheel it back and forth, make sure it feels okay, and we'll go to the final step on what we need to do to make sure this is going to be a safe assembly. Now, when I said we weren't done, and that was just a mock-up, the safe way to build a steering shaft is once you get it set up, mark everything, and then where your set screws are going to go through the U-joint into the shaft, drill a countersunk hole in the shaft. That way your set screw can sit in it, locking it in place, and it has no opportunity to slide. That way, if anything does go wrong, your shaft can't fall out. On this side, the set screw goes into the hole that was already in the 1-inch double D, and up here, the set screw will engage this depression there. So we will be 100% safe, and I'm going to get that reassembled. Well, the last thing we're going to do in this video is we're going to get them tires a little further up in the wheel well for a couple of reasons. Number one, that's a 31-inch tall tire on the back of the car. I plan on running a 29 with my 15 by 10 wheels, which will make them stick out about that far. So I essentially want close to that wheel gap with the 29, but I want the rear end to be low enough to facilitate that gap, because if I put those tires on there now, it'd look like a monster truck. Another reason why I'm lowering the rear is once we get the drivetrain in the front of this car, it's going to bring it down a little bit. And I want to keep this thing away from being completely level. I want it lower in the back and proud in the nose. So I just went on Speedway and got a couple of 1.5 extruded aluminum blocks and some 10-inch U-bolts for a 3-inch round axle, which is what this Dana 44 is in the car. So let's get the rear end of the car up in the air. Let's knock those old U-bolts off, and let's get this new stuff in and see how it looks. I think that looks pretty good, bringing that rear end down an 1.5 inches. It gives me about an inch gap from that 31 to the lip of the outer quarter there, which would be great when I run 29s on it because I'm gonna want, 2 inches of room, because they're gonna stick out. I don't need them bottoming out over a bump or something, or launching and bumping the quarters. So I think that definitely gives it that dog's got worms dragging its butt on the carpet look. And once we get the 29s on the back, that'll lower the rear an inch still. And we'll get the motor and everything in the front, which will bring it down a little bit, still give it that nose-high stance. But let's take a step back, get an overall look at it. Oh yeah. Yeah, we got a nice proud, lots of room there. Got her just about tucked. And the nice thing is, like for actual drag racing, I can run a 31-inch tall tires. You could see from the tread, that's about an inch. I can run a 31 and roll this fender lip, and we wouldn't have to worry about it if I run it on a 15x8 wheel like that one there. But I really want that, kind of old school slick sticking out just a little bit to give it that full gasser vibe. But the rear of the car is much closer to the ground now. And yeah, you could see she just goes right uphill. That's just the way I like it. All right, I think I got plenty done in a day and a half's time worth of work, and cutting, welding, and wrenching. Now mind you, this car was power brakes, power steering, and all those other luxury things that you could get in 1973. And now it's a Vega manual steering box. We got the shaft done. We got a GM F-body column in. And we went ahead, got rid of the power brakes, and put in a manual Corvette style master cylinder. Now, as far as the proportioning valve goes, it's actually going to be mounted behind the motor plate down on the toe board to keep it out of the way of the headers and all that stuff, because this will have fender well headers on it, so we're going to need that space. We also got the rear end lowered to where I want it, and now it's time to get down to brass tacks, the nut and bolt of what does it take to finish this car from this point. The chassis, pretty much done. We just need to throw shocks on it. I need to finalize the steering linkage as far as the tie rod and the drag link. Other than that, that's pretty simple, pretty easy to do. So let's go ahead, front to back, and go over what's left to do on this car. So first thing in the front, we got the tilt done, all that's done. We need to put a rad in it. I'm going to use a 28-inch aluminum triple pass radiator that I can get from Speedway that'll sit between the frame rails, get it low enough that it'll catch plenty of air. So we need radiator. So once we get the radiator in, we move back a little further. I do have to make mounts for the small block motor plate, because I'm going to be running that aluminum head 350 in this car just to make sure we could sort the suspension out with, only 400 horse. So small block motor plate. Past that, we'll go straight down, finish steering. Just back from that, we do need shocks. Now, from there, we have pretty much everything up front taken care of. I'm going to go ahead and put fan up here too with the rad. I'm going to run dual electric fans on that. Obviously, I'm not going to run one run off the front of the motor. We need brake calipers on the front. brake calipers, and wheel cylinders. I don't know what kind of shape the wheel cylinders are in the back. That's why I put that on with the brake calipers. Proportioning valve and lines. So we got that. Fuel lines. Next, clutch. So we need flywheel, slash clutch, slash pedal. So that's all the stuff for the clutch. Transmission, we've got that. So we need, I've got the shatterproof, or the scatter valve on it already. For the trans, we need the shifter mount and linkage. I have the shifter. All right, so now we're bringing ourselves into the cab of the car. We need to reconnect wiring. Pretty easy. The wiring in this car is actually in tremendously good shape, so we're just going to reuse that. No sense in throwing a painless harness in it for now. I want to get the car finished. If we keep nitpicking everything, instead of it just going, oh, it will work, or oh, well, we need to make it better, we'll be here forever working on this car. So wiring, we need seats. Gauges. So wiring, seats, gauges, outer rockers, which is not a critical thing. All the structures there, the outer rockers basically just to finish the bottom of the door threshold and make it look pretty. So rockers and thresholds. Thresh. There we go. Took me a minute to remember how to spell that. So, seats, rockers, thresholds, rear firewall. We need that. Rear firewall. Fuel cell. Let's see. I'm just kind of going over the whole thing. Drive shaft would be helpful. Drive shaft. The rear end, we're just going to throw a lunchbox locker in there for now to get us posi. So locker. Okay, so as far as the trunk goes, I just need to make some standalone mounts in the back. The floor is not the greatest, don't care. That's why I'm putting a firewall behind the rear seat. So it'll keep all the outside, and we'll be able to support a fuel cell, but we don't need it perfect in the trunk. So trunk mounts. We need to set this on actual universal body mounts. So install body mounts. We're actually getting there. I'm running out of stuff to think of. So we have fuel lines, fuel cell, As far as under the car, well, we need headers. We need the all-important Federwell headers, so headers. And along with that, we need exhaust, so build side pipes. I guess that's pretty much all the nut and bolt stuff we have to do to this car. Oh, hood pins for down here. Hood pins. I think that's all the nut and bolt stuff now. I do kind of need to fix this door. So fix door. And as far as that, we get into the making it look pretty aspect of everything. So we're going to start with the roof. Use evaporust on the roof. Rust. Treat. Prime. Paint. Paint wheels. Letter the car. I do need some finish welding to go on around the car, so we'll just add that. Finish welding. And then one other thing that I'd like to do, so I don't just have lap belts, is also put the roll bar in it. Roll bar / chassis stiffening. I don't know if there's really anything else, and this might look like a long list, but you got to remember, we built this car from the ground up. I had to build the frame. My buddies really killed it putting floors in this thing. They did an awesome job, and like everything I've done so far has all been heavy fabrication. Like really, really intense fabrication, all the way from the frame to the bottom of the body to doing the tilt to all that stuff, getting the brake pedal box dropped and all that. So really, throttle pedal, see, is you think of stuff as you go. Throttle pedal cable. There we go. Battery cables. So, battery cables. I think I might have a sneeze. Oh, excuse me. All right. I think I've done adding stuff to the list. So, to finish this car, to get it running anyway, there's a lot of stuff on this list that does not need to be done to get it finished, like the roof paint, the wheel paint, the lettering, a couple other things like fixing the door. We don't need to put exhaust on it yet, but basically we need the rad, the motor plate, finish up my steering linkage, shocks, brakes, lines, fuel cell, everything for the clutch, the shifter mount, hook the wiring back up, seats, gauges would be nice to have, rockers and thresholds. Whenever that gets done, it gets done. Drive shaft, rear locker. We don't need the rear locker right off the bat. I'd like to have it before I do like one wheel peel burnouts and a gasser. Trunk mounts, that's a must. Put the body mounts in. Headers, hood pins, yeah, and roll bar, chassis stiffening, finish welding, throttle pedal, and battery cables. Honestly, in a project that was this intense to start with, this is not a bad list at all. This is like assembling a car that was good that you took apart and you're just upgrading. So, not bad. We're at the point that this could have been a nice car to start with. So, everything's there. The stuff for the brakes is there. It's done. The steering's there. It's done. It's all the huge stuff on making the car stop and go, other than just finishing the lines and stuff like that. All the heavy fab is done. I'm super stoked about that. So I'm going to put this list up somewhere, and we'll keep up with crossing stuff off as we get into the home stretch. My plan is, it is the middle of November right now. I want to have this thing fired for the first time by the end of January. And really, all I need is fuel system, radiator, the fan, and the clutch, and all that stuff to get it in, and we can get it fired up. And wiring, everything else, that's all simple. Most of it is intact. I need to lengthen the front harness to hook it back to the power distribution block and get that bolted back in the firewall. But everything else is there. So I'm pretty stoked about that. So I'm going to take a second to think, make sure I didn't miss anything, and we'll check back in with you. Well, I gotta say, that's not bad for a day and a half's worth of work, like I stated earlier. I'm pretty happy with how the firewall turned out. I'm very happy. Part of the reason of this build, or this channel in general, is I want to build cool stuff. And I never was a fabricator per se. Anything I'm doing is completely self-taught. I didn't like sit around some master fabricator, become his apprentice, or any of that stuff. This is all stuff that I just decided, you know what, the hell with it. Other people can do it, I can tackle it too. And hopefully that gives you guys the inspiration and the confidence to just go out and start sticking some metal together, or work on your project, or do something a little different that you don't need to wait for someone else to work on it, or you don't need to let it languish in a corner of your garage, your shed, your backyard, just because you don't think you have the skills to do it. I can tell you, just in my journey working on this car, that I have become a much better fabricator from day one to now. And it's just repetition and kind of putting a picture together in your head to get the final product that you want. A lot of this car is just that. It's just me. I'm going to tackle it. I'm going to do it to the best of my abilities with the knowledge I have, as far as like putting a frame together that's straight. That's not real hard. You just need to take your time and measure. As far as the sheet metal fabrication, you just got to take your time, measure, cut, put it together. The floors, of course, I couldn't have done that without my good friends that just, I say it all the time, they're rock stars. So this car wouldn't be near as far as it is without them, you know, knocking out the floors while I've been on the road. But hey, with every project, sometimes you do need a little help, especially something this big. When I first bought this car, I didn't think it'd be this much of a project to the point that it was literally a ground up build, from the perspective of this car was in the ground and half of it stayed with the ground when I drug it away. So this is an absolute ground up build that's basically the old shell of the 73 Checker on mostly a new frame with mostly new sheet metal underneath and a lot of fabrication going into it, but still a very budget oriented build. I am not that deep financially into this car. When I say not that deep, we are well under $5,000. If I had to put a figure on it, with all the parts I bought, with all the materials, plus the cost of the car, maybe $3,000 into this car so far. That's not bad for having a car that could not roll on its own real well without folding in half to a rolling steering chassis. Of course, it doesn't stop yet. I got to do the brake lines. So I did get the entire list here. So now we have this motivation to start crossing stuff off as it gets done. And the more you cross off, the more excited you get, the more you want to do. So that is where we're at right now. And hopefully you're enjoying this build as much as I am, because I put a short out about this. We all just learned that Roadkill and all its associated shows are over. So that being said, we're still going to be able to see those guys, thankfully. Go ahead, you know, if you haven't already checked them out on YouTube, check out David Freiberger, Finnegan, Chappelle, Dirthead Fred, all them guys. Because they produce the content that inspires like what I'm doing and the rest of you guys are doing right now. I'm sure of it. So check them out. But of course, subscribe here first. So go ahead, like, share, and subscribe, and keep following along with this build, along with the over 70 other videos on the channel. And we can keep this thing rolling and keep the automotive TV shows now, I guess. I guess YouTube's kind of the default TV show area. So let's keep all this rolling. Like I said, like, share, subscribe. You can find me and all the updates on the projects as I'm working on them before the videos come out on Facebook at T.N.T. Garage and Performance, and on Instagram at T.N.T. Garage and Performance. So you'll see all the updates, what I'm up to as I'm actually producing a video, and then the video will come out later, which you'll see the update and the link to that whenever they come out. So I'm pretty stoked at how close we're getting to getting this car back on the road after several decades. And I'm especially looking forward to, once this thing is running and driving, taking it back to the family that I acquired it from, that the owner had passed away, and they really love this car, and I really want to take it back and give them all a ride in it. Just, you know, just something special. I think it's really cool. I love the story behind this car, and there's going to be quite a few things from those stories that gets implemented into this car, which will be to come. You'll see them. I think they're kind of neat, especially when the car gets lettered. There's going to be a lot of that cooked into it. So I think we'll call it good there. And remember, until next time, if it ain't broke, fix it till it is. We'll see you soon.